Will ROPA increase estate agency fees? Today I'm joined by Russell Quirk, a man who needs no introduction as one of the most controversial people in UK estate agency. Talk to me about ROPA and estate agency fees, Russell.
So I think that there is a direct link between, well, let's say standards in estate agency and fees. And by standards, I mean something by way of a better offering to the public, better service, better compliance, and so on. And I'm hesitating using the word service because it's such a throwaway phrase now. Good service, bad service. What the hell does that mean? So your offering, your proposition, the way you deal with your customer, client, buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, whatever, if that becomes provably better, then you'll be able to charge more, right? And we should understand that that's the case because we're used to that being the case in every other walk of life, right? Whether it's a more expensive car is better in some ways, a more expensive holiday is better in some ways, a more expensive meal is better in some ways, right? So we understand the concept of paying more for something as long as it is better, right? So it has to be better. You can't just say it's better and it's not, right? I go back to another video that we did. We talked about patience. Now, to prove that you are better by way of your offering, obviously that can take a little bit of time. I think, though, if at long last UK estate agency becomes licensed, that automatically has to raise its standard and raise its game, which means, A, because of the comfort of the very licensing organisation and regime itself, and because it increases standards, in a matter of months, maybe years, but matter of months, hopefully, estate agents will be able to command a higher fee because their offering, their outcomes, their performance, their standards are better. So
hold on a second. Just because you pass an exam doesn't mean you're better.
No, it doesn't. But this is where I come to how the licensing regime needs to be, right? It's not, and look, no disrespect to the NAA, Property Mark 1, look, they're a great organisation, but I'm not sure, and they're great when it comes to chastising agents and hauling agents over the coals, and they can fine agents and so on, but they don't compensate the public, do they? I mean, the Ombudsman does, but we don't have a regime where there is what I would call true accountability to the consumer. So yes, you're right. It's not just about passing it out. I remember doing my NAA exam, which believe me, I did do, and I passed many, many years ago. And I think one of the questions was, where's the fire assembly point? Another question was, where's the first aid box? I mean, really? I mean, it should have been much more about under what circumstances do you not have to put an offer forward to a seller from a buyer that you've received an offer on, and so on. It needs to be based on, day-to-day kind of operations, if you like. Anyway, licensing in itself will not help unless that licensing has teeth. Now, here's the rub. We can either end up in a licensing regime where there is no accountability, no real transparency, and no consequences, or what I would advocate is a regime where there are significant consequences. So in other words, this is what I think. Whether you're the CEO of Connells Countrywide or whether you are an office junior that has just started working at 16 in the back office. I don't know what juniors do anymore. Do they still have juniors? I mean, in my day, it was the send out and the tea, but I think that's probably changed.
Stick the photos on the brochures.
Yeah, 30 years later, it's probably changed. So whoever you are, even if you're in admin in central office or you're in compliance, everybody should have to do the licensing qualification. It should be done online. It should be done as a requirement as an entry into the sector, into the industry, and then done again every 3 years. And if you fail it, you are not permitted to operate. Simple as that. Not just, oh, don't worry about it, better luck next time. Literally, at that moment in time, you are no longer that office manager. You are no longer that CEO. You cannot operate in the estate agency sector if you haven't passed it. But here's the other thing, Chris. We then need to make sure that it's got real teeth and accountability, whereby if you transgress, so if there's a complaint against you that is upheld because you didn't tell Mr. and Mrs. Smith about that offer, or you didn't give them best advice, you told them they should accept Mr. and Mrs. Jones's offer, and it turned out it's because they're doing their mortgage through you, then you get suspended. And it's public. So you've got literal accountability, which not only automatically raises standards because you know that you're held to account, but also the message that the first few people getting suspended, expelled, or whatever puts out to the rest of the industry is, oh my God, I've got to now really up my game, because I can see that the guy in the office up the road to me transgressed. He was wrong. It was a significant breach and he got kicked out, or it was not a significant breach and he had to do the exam again and so on. So if the regime is not just based on where the first aid box is an exam, but is based on actual accountability and responsibility on the part of the individual, standards will rise. That message that gets sent to the consumer that these guys really know what they're
A load
doing.
of people will leave, so there's greater.
The crap ones will leave. I did a survey probably 2 or 3 years ago now for the PR business of estate agents, 1,000 estate agents. How many of you think there should be licensing an estate agency? 25% said no. And I immediately think, well, they're the 25% that need to go. Why would you not want to be held to account for standards?
I mean,
why wouldn't you? I mean, why would you want to fly in an aeroplane with an unlicensed pilot? Would you want to go to a meal with Mrs. Watkin knowing that the chef had, or the organisation, the restaurant itself was not subject to food hygiene standards? I mean, would that be okay? I don't think it would.
I mean, the industry is quite fragmented. I mean, there's 14,500 estate agents, and to be at number 5,
branches.
No, firms.
Yeah, firms. Yeah,
firms, and to be at number 5,000, you only need to sell 21 houses a year.
Yep.
What scares me is what about the ones that are below that? It's not going to be viable for them to be estate agents, is it?
What scares me is that we've ended up in an industry that for most people is an accidental career, right? How many people actually leave school or university wanting to be an estate agent?
I've only ever two. I don't know.
There you go. So most fall into it accidentally, right? And I want this. The industry that I've been involved in since I was a kid, literally being in my grandmother and grandfather's house, listening to my grandfather and my uncles and my father talking about their estate agency business, that should be something that we should be proud of as an industry that has such high standards that it means that people want to become estate agents like they do in other countries, right? So in the US, being a realtor or an estate agent, real estate agent, is seen as laudable. It's seen as a coveted thing because of their status in society and because of the money they can earn. We simply don't have that here. We have generally low standards because we allow those low standards to prevail. And how many listing negs or negs or admin juniors or whatever can honestly say that they have had proper training about compliance, about estate agency law? I mean, it just doesn't exist. So,
well, I mean, I challenge anyone to quote more than 10 trainers to cover 14,000 estate agency firms. I mean, that is,
it may be, but look, no disrespect to the trainers, but the trainers haven't sold a house for 20 years, most of them. And yes, they might keep up with legislation a little bit, but honestly, I don't even buy, not all, but some of the trainers that are basically training people as if it's 1995.
At least they're getting training and development.
Yeah, I guess, but there should be a regime that I'm afraid, and look, I'm a small state kind of guy when it comes to politics, right? I'm a bit of a Tory, I don't know if you realise that. Old Tory, not the current lot. But we absolutely need to have, I'm afraid, a push, a kind of an oversight that is enforced. Because I'm afraid this industry for years and years and years has been left to its own devices with some very, very basic legislation like the Estate Agents Act 1979. 1979 hasn't been altered since 1979, the Estate Agents Act. Get that into our heads, right? So it's a backward industry with backward legislation. It's got compliance coming out of its ears, but around things like money laundering and ID checks, which is, okay, fair enough, with the police for the government, it seems. But when it comes to lining up 100 estate agents and asking them a question about estate agency, again, is it okay to favour a buyer that is doing their mortgage, or because they're doing their mortgage or they're conveyancing through you? Some people say, yeah, I think that's fine. Well, I'm afraid in law, it isn't, unless there's a really good reason for it in terms of their position, whatever. Anyway, the point I'm making is we have to enforce licensing to make the industry better. If we do that, more people want to work in it, professional standards will increase. And then when we have got rid of the stigma of UK estate agency, of course we can charge more. At the moment, we and I think is it Papua New Guinea, I think. We're the 2 countries in the world that charge the lowest estate agency fees. And we're also one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have licensing. Go figure, join the dots. No licensing means lower fees. Licensing, like in the States, Australia, France, Germany, etc., higher fees.
Thank you for your time today, Russell.